Good morning. Happy Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. Probably won't do the date thing, but it just came out, so I'm going to roll with it. The Rolling Stones, vagabonds of sorts, are right about something. They have a song that some people will probably know, older folks more so than younger, just because of how music goes. But the song was You Can't Always Get What You Want. And the verses tend to imply that the singer is watching folks who are hoping for something, or they're interacting with people on various things. But then the refrain comes back where it's, when they complain about stuff, it's like you can't always get what you want. And then the end of it goes, but if you try sometimes, well, you just might find you get what you need. And this is a kind of distinction that is supposed to be a bit more obvious, but because of the time and the age that we live in, it has been diluted. The line between want and need has been washed away through abundance, through power, through ability, through technology, through all sorts of stuff, even up to the denial of reality. Whatever people needed to do, they wanted to get what they want, and that's the long and short of it. That's the beginning and end of it. And the reason why I wanted to highlight this today is because I think that there are a lot of folks, and Jesse Spots on his channel, he's talked about this a number of times with respect to bargaining. There are a lot of folks who are now realizing they're not always going to get what they want, and what they want was a good thing. What they wanted was something that was not intrinsically bad. And so when we are discussing those who are still in the flesh, for example, sometimes the things that they want, we look at it and we go, okay, well, it's a good thing when they don't get what they want, because what they want was self-destructive, it was damaging, it was, this, that, and the other. We can look at it and say, well, what you wanted was bad, and so, you shouldn't get that. But within Christianity, when we set our eyes on things that we want that are good, and then we don't get it, it's a tough place to be. An example from my own life would be that due to medical complications, the number of children that my wife can bear naturally is limited. There's a hard limit. At a certain point, continuing to bear children will put both her and the potential life of a child at risk. And so it doesn't matter what our desire is. It doesn't matter if we would want more children through that natural process. We can't get what we want. And it can be defeating. This year, for example, for those who are more in tune with politics, this year has been an incredible frustration about people not always getting what they want. A particular person in office, or even if they did get the person they wanted in office, they didn't get the free stuff they were promised. And so it's, everybody, for a whole host of reasons, has a lot to justify being miserable. But, again, it's because we have been able to get what we want so frequently, because we've been able to get exactly what we want so reliably, so instantaneously, that we haven't practiced contentment that was either put on us by circumstances or that we've chosen to pursue through a voluntary restriction. Now, some people are better able to tap into this because the place that they were at in this life, materially, carnally speaking, they were already closer to an edge where being pushed over the edge, and they're struggling now financially with food, with housing, all that kind of stuff. Those are the people that are being hit hardest first, and we're seeing that play out right now with the news in the Midwest and whatnot. I was looking at a map, and there are places in the central United States right now that are negative temperatures, And on top of that, a lot of these states are struggling with power outages. And, so it's that right there is going to very quickly create a delineation between want and need. People might want a fancy new car, or a meal, or for power to come back. Um, but there's going to be some stuff they're going to say, all right, I got basics. I got things that I really need, things that I want, and there's a clear distinction between the two. Because if I get what I want but not what I need, I'm screwed. I'm freezing. I'm hungry. I'm without a job. There's a circumstance forcing that definition to be clarified, to be defined, I guess. Circular, that definition there. But what's ended up happening is that's filtering its way into every circle, though. Every conversation, every arena of life, every setting that such a dynamic used to exist is coming back. One example with the preparedness community is that if you're trying to purchase primers, for example, so you reload hand load bullets. There's a component for that, which is called a primer, that goes in the base of the cartridge. And so when you pull the trigger, there's a hammer that hits a firing pin. The firing pin hits a primer, and then the primer ignites the powder, and then that explosion is what propels the bullet down the barrel. So a little gun trivia for you there. Anyway, that little component, though, if you are the kind of person who reloads the casing, you can put a primer in there. The shell is capable of being reused. But you just got to replace some of the components. Like the powder you got to replace, the bullet you got to replace, and the primer you got to replace. But the shell that everything is held together with can be reused a couple of times at least. But there's components now for that recipe that are missing. They're just gone. And and then the thing is, they're gone at a price that they used to be. So you'd used to be able to get primers for like 2 to 3 cents a piece, and you'd buy like a tray of 1,000. So it'd be, $5-10, and you'd be able to reload, a pretty good number of rounds. They were among the cheapest of the components of reloading. The bullets were expensive, the shells were expensive, and the powder and the primers were the least expensive components. But now you can't find them at all. You can't find them anywhere unless you spend a ton of money. So, like, for example, if you go on Gunbroker, which is kind of like the eBay for guns, if you go on Gunbroker, you can find primers, but they're incredibly expensive. And so now all of a sudden, if you're interested in hand loading, it's like, all right, do I want this or do I need it? Like, am I really going to be able to justify the expense of buying these primers now? It's not about, I should have done this or should have done that late. That's always going to be the case. There's always going to be stuff you look back on and say, maybe I should have done something different. But in the moment right now, how is that choice going to be made? Is this really something that you want, or is this something that you need? Credit cards are a manner by which a lot of people have been able to destroy that difference. They think, well, I can just get whatever I want and pay it off over time. I can spend tomorrow's money today and get everything that I want and everything that I need, and everything will be fine. But what we're seeing is that's not going to be sustainable. That's not going to continue on indefinitely. Like I said earlier, with the political thing, a lot of people wanted Trump to be in office. He's not. It's fun to watch all of the drama that's going on with respect to the election, and there's all sorts of interesting theories I've seen about why do they still have the inauguration stage up, and why are there still so many National Guard posted in D.C. If everything is all said and done and everything is supposed to have been handed off and blah 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 blah. But again, from a political standpoint, then Biden's currently in office and making choices, and those choices have consequences. The interactions we have with our neighbors are based on the reality that we have in front of us, and not on the reality that we hope for, on what we would want. Well, just a couple more days, just another lawsuit, just another case, and then everything will be fine. It's putting a hope into the future for something that we want now, and it's continuing to destroy the difference between want and need. We want a political system that would respect our privacy, but what we need is the relationships with our neighbors, because that's the foundational building block of government in the first place. It's kind of this weird thing. A lot of folks are worried about gun control laws, but at the same time, you look at the way that these things are written, you look at the actual number of firearms that are in circulation, and you look at how people are already fed up and tired, and in some cases bored, and have nothing to lose. Everything's being taken away from them. And it's very quickly looking like what is going to happen is it's untenable. There's not going to be, and I've argued this before, but there's not going to be some dystopian government overlord that's going to be able to universally, efficiently, effectively enforce these laws. It's going to be selective enforcement. The law is going to be there, but similar to how so many people right now don't actually abide by the speed limit, it's like look at that as an example. How easy is it to just have a device, a passive device, just sitting here, clock the speed. If you're over the speed limit, send someone a ticket. Like that could conceivably exist, but they don't have that in large part. There's some places where they do, where folks have tried to invest in that and whatnot. But by and large, there's a law in place that says, you will not go over this speed limit, and yet people can break it all the time. And it's going to be the same thing with firearms. It's going to be the same thing with raising your children. There's going to be laws on the books that shouldn't be there, but unless they can be enforced, it's not going to matter. And so that's where we might want the freedom, we might want the liberty, we might want those things to not be on the books. But what we ultimately need is to know who is around us, whether these things are going to be enforced or not. One of the things that I had looked at recently in trying to sort of plan ahead in the event the industry that I'm in collapses in all the stuff that's going on, where else could we live? Where could we move to that would be quote unquote better? That might have more jobs, or maybe just the land is a lot less expensive, or minimizing expenses and like all that kind of stuff. Where would the laws that we would want to be already in place? And fundamentally, what ends up happening is that we realize it's always going to be far away. There's always going to be a huge price to pay, and so the conversation goes back to is it what we want or is it what we need? Do we want, for example, to homeschool our children, or do we need to homeschool our children? And so if we have conflicts going on around the priority of raising our children ourselves, of teaching them ourselves, that's going to become a need which dominates other things. We're going to have to give stuff up that we want in order to get what we need. And so this whole mentality, this whole conflict is something that is not viewed in a positive light by many folks. Again, because of this history that we've got. We've as a country have been very affluent. We've been able to rack up the debt, and the belief is that we'll pay it off someday, and so we keep being able to spend what we don't actually have, because everybody's kind of in on this mutual suicide pact. It's like, well, I'll say the money's worth that much if you'll say it's worth that much, and we kind of all agree, and nothing's kind of come of it yet. But we're starting to see changes. Like I said, we're starting to see where that's not going to cut it. This last year with the pandemic, people wanted to go to restaurants, to go to church, but they couldn't, or at least, again, because of enforcement or the fear of enforcement, they were abiding by the law without actually considering whether or not the law could be enforced. My own local church was one of the few who, was it late May, June timeframe, we opened back up. We were not remaining closed, and we actually had an elder, one of the leaders of the church, leave the church because we would not mandate that people wore masks. We made it an option, but we did not mandate it. We did not say that, if folks were going to be in the sanctuary, that they would have to wear a mask. This person basically said, well, if you're not going to wear a mask, then you don't love me. If you're not going to do what I want, you don't care about me. And the other leaders of the church, we were just kind of looking at each other, almost kind of like, wait, like really, this is the hill that you're going to die on? This is what you need? It's not just a want. I want people to wear masks. It's like, no. If I'm going to be here, if I'm going to be participating in the church, if I'm going to do anything with you people, and it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not much. It was basically just this, you guys have this, crazy idea that you're going to be able to do this stuff, and we can't afford to, take these risks and all this, that, and the other. We need to know that we can be safe. So that became the priority for them. That became what made or broke, make or break the relationship there. They didn't understand that you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, well, you just might find you get what you need. Because what we need was fellowship. Because here's the thing, if you look at the statistics, suicides are off the charts. Well, I'm sorry for the hyperbole. Suicide rates are considerably higher than where they were the year previous. Drug abuse is a lot higher. Domestic violence is a lot higher. People are going crazy because of the disconnect with other people. We need other people more than we need one more day. Like, it's that level of interdependency that humanity has on social dynamics. Like, we need other people. We can't do it alone. And the ones that can are tend to be broken for some reason or another. There's something off. There's something that's supposed to be there which isn't. And so from an outside view, it must, oh, well, look at you. You're independent. You can do your own thing. You're fine. You can be disconnected and survive. But it's not scaling. It's not capable of being scaled up. There's no civilization of independent islands. It doesn't work. What we want is heaven, ultimately. Whether you're Christian or not, that's what people want. And to describe what that looks like, we go to Revelation chapter 21. Starting in verse 1, it says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away.'" And this is kind of the theme I see around every one of the conversations about want and need, is that people want the old order of things to pass away. They want that new order. They want, and I'm intentionally using that because some people are doing it from a position of scheming. Oh, I'm going to create a new order through politics, through control of economics, of people, of technology. I'm going to create a new world order. And the old order of things will be passing away through my power and my strength and my ability and all this, that, and the other. Only that that's what they want and not what they need. So they're going to fail to do what they want to do just as much as we might fail in what we want to do. Whether the things that we want are good or bad, we're not going to get everything we want. We can dream of things that are, frankly, impossible to get. And this delusion that we've had as a society that we should try to sustain as many parallel paths as possible, that as many people should get as much as they want for as long as they can, it was always going to lead to destruction. That's a greed, a consuming fire that is never satiated. It never dies back down to a warm glow. it just burns everything out and leaves nothing but ash behind it. And even some people think that they want that. It's like even some people think that they want this system to burn down, and then that would be how they would bring in the new order of things. But it's not going to work that way. It never has. You look throughout history, nothing has worked the way that anybody wanted it to exactly. There might be some trends. There might be some specific examples where for one or two people, for a short period of time, things went the way they want. But it's short-sighted. It's not accounting for the long term. Because here's the thing, that passage from Revelation, what comes before that is terrible. What comes before that is an entire lifetime for most people of never getting exactly what they want. The hope for something unseen. The new heaven and the new earth. The time when our relationship with God is no longer distanced. They're going to go their whole life without that. Without that level of intimacy. But here's the thing. We don't need that for our lives to have meaning. For our lives to be worth living. We don't need to get what we want for there to be a reason to get up every morning, to get out of bed, to say some prayers, to read some scripture, to interact with other people. And the sooner that we figure out the difference between what we want and what we need, the sooner we learn to not just fulfill the desires, but to view them as what they are. It's a lust. And it's not always a bad thing, but that doesn't mean it's, even if what we're lusting for is good, that it's a good thing. If we learn maturity, if we do that through sanctification, through not just looking at, well, what do I want now, but what do I want for eternity? What do I want forever? And is what I'm doing, is what I'm believing, is what I'm putting my hope in, is what I'm putting my faith in, really going to get me there? Am I going to get what I need? Or am I going to be among the weeping and gnashing of teeth? Because I couldn't focus. I couldn't be disciplined. I couldn't be honest about my own shortcomings. Ask for help from God, from those who are brothers and sisters in the faith. I can't always get what I want. But if I pray, I will always get what I need.